Merrin lifted off the stole, took a slight step backward and then jolted the room with the lash of his voice as he commanded, "I cast you out, unclean spirit, along with every power of the enemy. Every spectre from hell. Every savage companion." Merrin's hand, at his side, dripped vomit to the rug. "It is Christ who commands you, who once stilled the wind and the sea and the storm." "Who?" Regan stopped vomiting and sat silent and unmoving, the whites of her eyes gleaming balefully at Merrin. From the foot of the bed, Karras watched her intently as his shock and excitement began to fade, as his mind began feverishly to thresh, to poke its fingers, unbidden, compulsively, deep into corners of logical doubt, poltergeists, psychokinetic action, adolescent tensions and mind-directed force. He frowned as he remembered something. He moved to the side of the bed, leaned over, reached down to grasp Regan's wrist. And found what he'd feared. Like the shaman in Siberia, Regan's pulse was racing at an unbelievable speed. The fact drained him suddenly of sun, and, glancing at his watch, Karras counted the heartbeats, now, like arguments against his life. "It is he who commands you, he who flung you headlong from the heights of heaven." Merrin's powerful adjuration pounded off the rim of Karras's consciousness in resonant, inexorable blows as the pulse came faster now. And faster. Karras looked at Regan. Still silent. Unmoving. Into icy air, thin mists of vapor wafted from the vomit like a reeking offering. Then the hair on Karras's arms began prickling up as, with nightmare slowness, a fraction at a time, Regan's head was turning, swiveling like a mannequin's, and creaking with the sound of some rusted mechanism, until the dread and glaring whites of those ghastly eyes were fixed on his. And therefore, tremble in fear, now, Satan. The head turned slowly back toward Merrin. "You corrupter of justice. You begetter of death. You betrayer of the nations. You robber of life. You." Karras glanced warily around as the lights in the room began flickering, and dimming, and then faded to an eerie, pulsing amber. Karras shivered. The room was getting even colder. "You prince of murderers. You inventor of every obscenity. You enemy of the human race. You." A muffled pounding jolted the room. Then another. Then steadily, shuddering through walls, through the floor, through the ceiling, splintering, and throbbing at a ponderous rate like the beating of a heart that was massive and diseased. "Depart, you monster. Your place is in solitude. Your abode is in a nest of vipers. Get down and crawl with them. It is God himself who commands you." The blood of. The poundings grew louder, began to come ominously faster and faster. "I adjure you, ancient serpent." And faster. "By the judge of the living and the dead, by your creator, by the creator of all the universe." 2. Sharon cried out, pressing her fists against her ears as the poundings grew deafening and now suddenly accelerated and leaped to a terrifying tempo. Regan's pulse was astonishing. It hammered at a speed too rapid to gauge. Across the bed, Merrin reached out calmly and with the end of his thumb traced the sign of the cross on Regan's vomit-covered chest. The words of his prayer were swallowed up in the poundings. Karras felt the pulse rate suddenly drop, and as Merrin prayed and traced the sign of the cross on Regan's brow, the nightmarish poundings abruptly ceased. "O God of heaven and earth, God of the angels and archangels," Karras could now hear Merrin praying as the pulse kept dropping, dropping. "Prideful bastard, Merrin. Scum. You will lose. She will die. The pig will die." The flickering haze had grown gradually brighter and the demon had returned to rage hatefully at Merrin. "Profligate peacock. Ancient heretic who dares to believe that the universe will one day become Christ. I adjure you, turn and look on me. Yes, look on me, you scum." The demon jerked forward and spat in Merrin's face, croaking afterward, "Thus does your master cure the blind." "God and Lord of all creation," prayed Merrin, reaching placidly for his handkerchief and wiping away the spittle. "Now follow his teaching, Merrin. Do it. Put your sanctified cock in the piglet's mouth and cleanse it. Swab it with the wrinkled relic and she will be cured, Saint Merrin. Yes, a miracle. A. Deliver this servant of. Hypocrite. You care nothing at all for the pig. You care nothing. You have made her a contest between us. I humbly. Liar, lying bastard. Tell us, where is your humility, Merrin? In the desert? In the ruins? In the tombs where you fled to escape your fellowmen? To escape from your inferiors, from the halt and the lame of mind? Do you speak to men, you pious vomit? Deliver. Your abode is in a nest of peacocks, Merrin. Your place is within yourself. Go back to the mountaintop and speak to your only equal. Merrin continued with the prayers, unheeding, as the torrent of abuse raged on. Do you hunger, Saint Merrin? Here, I give you both nectar and ambrosia, I give to you the daily bread of your God, croaked the demon mockingly as Regan excreted diuretically. For this is my body. Now consecrate that, Saint Merrin. Repelled, Karras focused his attention on the text as Merrin read a passage from St. Luke. My name is Legion, answered the man, for many demons had entered into him. And they begged Jesus not to command them to depart into the abyss. Now a herd of swine was there, feeding on the mountainside. And the demons kept entreating Jesus to let them enter into them. And he gave them leave. And the demons came out from the man and entered into the swine, and the herd rushed down the cliff and into the lake and were drowned. And, Willie, I bring you good news, croaked the demon. Karras glanced up and saw Willie near the door, stopping short with an armload of towels and sheets. I bring you tidings of redemption. It gloated. Elvira is alive. She lives. She is. Willie stared in shock, and now Carl turned and shouted at her, No, Willie. No. A drug addict, Willie, a hopeless. Willie, do not listen, cried Carl. Shall I tell you where she lives? Do not listen. Do not listen. Carl was rushing Willie out of the room. Go and visit her on Mother's Day, Willie. Surprise her. Go and... Abruptly the demon broke off and fixed its eyes on Karras. He had again checked Regan's pulse and, finding it strong enough to give her more Librium, he was moving to Sharon to instruct her to prepare another injection. Karras, do you want her? Leered the demon. She is yours. Yes, the stable whore is yours. You may ride her as you wish. Why, she fantasizes nightly concerning you, Karras. Yes, you and your long, thick, priestly cock. Sharon crimsoned and kept her eyes averted as Karras told her it was safe to give Regan the Librium. And a compazine suppository in case there's more vomiting, he added. Sharon nodded at the floor and started stiffly away. As she walked by the bed with her head still lowered, Regan croaked at her, slut, and then jerked up and hit her face with a flung bolt of vomit, and while Sharon stood paralyzed and in shock, the Dennings personality appeared, rasping, stable whore. Cunt. Sharon bolted from the room. The Dennings personality now grimaced with distaste, glanced around and asked, would someone crack a window open, please? It bloody stinks in this room. It's simply, no, 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 don't. It then amended. No, for heaven's sake, don't, or someone else might wind up bloody well dead. And then it cackled, winked monstrously at Karras and vanished. It is he who expels you. Oh, does he, Merrin? Does he? The demonic entity had returned and Merrin continued the adjurations, the applications of the stole and the constant tracings of the sign of the cross while the entity lashed him again obscenely. Too long, Karras worried. The fit was continuing far too long. Now the sow comes. The mother of the piglet. Karras turned and saw Chris coming toward him with a swab and a disposable syringe. She kept her head down as the demon hurled abuse, and Karras went to her, frowning. Sharon's changing her clothes, Chris explained, and Carl's. Karras cut her short with a brusque, all right, and together they approached the bed. Ah, yes, come see your handiwork, so mother. Come. Chris tried not to listen, not to look, while Karras pinned Regan's unresisting arms. See the puke. See the murderous bitch, the demon raged. Are you pleased? It is you who has done it. Yes, you with your career before anything. Your career before your husband, before her, before. Karras glanced around. Chris stood paralyzed. Go ahead, he told her firmly. Don't listen. Go ahead. Your divorce. Go to priests, will you? Priests will not help. The piglet is mad. Don't you understand that? You have driven her to madness and to murder and... I can't. Face contorted, Chris was staring at the quivering syringe in her trembling hand. She shook her head. I can't do it. Karras plucked the syringe from her fingers. All right, swab it. Swab the arm. Over here. In her coffin, you bitch, bye. Don't listen. Karras cautioned Chris again, and at this the demonic entity jerked its head around, its red-laced eyes bulging fury. And you, Karras. Yes. About you. Chris swabbed Regan's arm. Now, get out. Karras ordered as he poked the hypodermic needle into wasted flesh. Chris fled from the room. Yes, we know of your kindness to mothers, dear Karras, croaked the demon. The Jesuit blenched and for a moment did not move. Then slowly he drew out the needle and looked into the whites of Regan's eyes as out of her mouth came a slow, lilting singing in a sweet, clear voice like that of a very young choirboy, Tantum ergo sacramentum veneri cernui. It was a hymn sung at Catholic benediction. Karras stood bloodlessly as it continued. Weird and chilling, the singing was a vacuum into which Karras felt the horror of the evening rushing with a horrible clarity. He looked up and saw Merrin with a towel in his hands. With weary, tender movements he wiped away the vomit from Regan's face and neck. A antiquum documentum. The singing. Whose voice? Wondered Karras. And then fragments. Dennings. The window. Drained, he saw Sharon come back into the room and take the towel from Merrin's hands. I'll finish that, Father, she told him. I'm all right now. I'd like to change her and get her cleaned up before I give her the composine. Okay? Could you both wait outside for a while? The priests left the room, stepping into the warmth and the dimness of the hall, where they both leaned wearily against the wall, their heads down and arms folded as they listened to the eerie, muffled singing from within. It was Karras who at last broke their silence. You said earlier, Father, there was only one entity we're dealing with. Yes. The hushed tones, the lowered heads, were confessional. All the others are but forms of attack, continued Merrin. There is one, only one. It is a demon. There was a silence. Then Merrin stated simply, I know you doubt this. But this demon I have met once before. And he is powerful, Damien. Powerful. A silence. Then Karras spoke again. We say the demon cannot touch the victim's will. Yes, that is so. There is no sin. Then what would be the purpose of possession? What's the point? Who can know? Answered Merrin. Who can really hope to know? And yet I think the demon's target is not the possessed. It is us, the observers, every person in this house. And I think the point is to make us despair. To reject our own humanity. Damien. To see ourselves as ultimately bestial, vile and putrescent. Without dignity. Ugly, unworthy. And there lies the heart of it, perhaps, in unworthiness. For I think belief in God is not a matter of reason at all. I think it finally is a matter of love, of accepting the possibility that God could ever love us. Merrin paused, then continued more slowly and with an air of introspection. Again, who really knows? But it is clear, at least to me, that the demon knows where to strike. Oh, yes, he knows. Long ago I despaired of ever loving my neighbor. Certain people repelled me. And so how could I love them? I thought. It tormented me, Damien. It led me to despair of myself and from that, very soon, to despair of my God. My faith was shattered. Surprised, Karras turned and looked at Merrin with interest. And what happened? He asked. Well, at last I realized that God would never ask of me that which I know to be psychologically impossible. That the love which he asked was in my will and not meant to be felt as emotion. No. Not at all. He was asking that I act with love, that I do unto others, and that I should do it unto those who repelled me, I believe, was a greater act of love than any other. Merrin lowered his head and spoke even more softly. I know that all of this must seem very obvious to you, Damien. I know. But at the time I could not see it. Strange blindness. How many husbands and wives, Merrin uttered sadly, must believe they have fallen out of love because their hearts no longer race at the sight of their beloveds. Ah, dear God. He shook his head. And then he nodded. There it lies, I think, Damien. Possession. Not in wars, as some tend to believe. Not so much. And very rarely in extraordinary interventions such as here. This girl, this poor child. No. I tend to see possession most often in the little things, Damien. In the senseless, petty spites and misunderstandings. The cruel and cutting word that leaps unbidden to the tongue between friends. Between lovers. Between husbands and wives. Enough of these and we have no need of Satan to manage our wars. These we manage for ourselves. For ourselves.